Right then. It went on. Right then. Back onto the Amarok. So it's took a little bit of time since yesterday to get the tune where we want it to be. We've been brand new, we'd never had one with this ECU, this exact ECU pattern, so we didn't just have a tune, bang on it and be 90% there. But it's not too different to ones we have done. So it's on here, we've done the pulls, this is what we've got. So this is what it's done, 234.8 horsepower and about 420 foot-pound of torque. So this was the very first run we did, nothing done to it, just literally as we drove it off the road test onto the dyno. So now what we've done is put a tune on there. There we go. 279 and 450 foot-pound of torque, which this has already got a fair bit of torque, so we're not really improved it as much as I thought we would, sort of below 2800, but then we've made a lot more everywhere else. So there's a fair increase, it's like what, 40 horsepower or thereabouts, and 25 foot-pound at the bottom end, 25, 30 foot-pound at the bottom end, but then it sort of rises to about 50 foot-pound at sort of 3900 RPM, so should be pretty decent, should be a lot quicker, which we'll get back out on the road and see. But one thing I did want to check while we're here, this new version of Dyno Dynamics that we've got on the four-wheel drive one, since we updated it all, it's got a different setting which, where are we? I don't know if I dare do it yet. No, it's going to mess my graphs up, I'll leave it, it's a pain. So basically you've got your shoot 4F, shoot 6F and all these sort of different ones which are usually, they say, Dyno Dynamics say, it's the cylinder, the amount of cylinders that you've got. But when you go to the four-wheel drive car, which is what this is, you have to select shoot 44 normally, which in theory is 4-cylinder four-wheel drive, which is alright if we're doing Subarus and Evos, but we're not, we're doing a lot of 6-cylinder. So we've never done this test before because it's only, like I say, it's not only a couple of months since we got this new software. There is a 5F, which I'm not sure why, 5.4, shoot 5.4. I'm not sure why, because how many 4-cylinder, 5-cylinder four-wheel drive cars? There's a TTRS, RS3, old Audi Quattros, that sort of stuff. There's not many, so I don't know why they've done that. A 6.4 would make sense, but anyway. So if I look here, this is what it did standard in the shoot 54, so 279. But then when we've done the tune, we've got 315 horsepower and 500 foot-pound of torque, which what a lot of people are saying when they're getting their Amaroks tuned and stuff like that, that is nearer to the mark what people are claiming they can get, which I know this engine in a A4 Quattro or whatever will do, like in our front-wheel drive A4, we had 310, 315 horsepower from it. But the gearbox couldn't take it when you're on the road. So it does kind of make sense, but sort of the Dyno Dynamics is not probably the best one at calculating the drivetrain losses. If you pump your tyres up, you might get a little bit on some stuff, but there's a certain point that makes no difference. Let them down, you'll lose a bit. If it's riding up and down the rollers, it can make a difference, especially we had somebody moaning saying that we're cheating and you've gained 20 horsepower doing what you're doing. You'll see on some of our videos the cars are quite tightly strapped down. The problem you have with some cars, if you strap them a bit too tight, it sort of rides, pulls against the straps and pushes against the roll that reads. But then when it's sort of the power starts dropping a little bit, or the power sort of just about getting to the peak, it settles back down and pushes on the roll that's not reading. So you don't gain any power by letting it ride up onto the top, you just don't lose any by strapping it down too hard and pulling it back. But anyway, I digress. So whichever way you want to look at this, we've made an improvement, a fairly sizable improvement. The difference between the runs is very, very similar. It's just about 40 horsepower, and they're about 25 30 foot-pound of torque. So the spreads are very similar. What it does when the run's happening, it don't make any difference. The ramp rate's still the same, so it's just the calculations in the background that the dyno does to try and produce the figure from the rolls being turned to spitting you a graph out on here, which we can load up the wheel horsepower figures and all that sort of stuff. But then people are like, well, what do you do with torque? Because the torque that you measure at the wheels is nothing like what you'd measure at an engine. You're going to have thousands of Newton meters of torque at the wheels, but you're only going to have hundreds at the engine. So it's an irrelevant thing if you ask me. We just stick to wherever the dyno spits out in shootout mode at the flywheel, torque and power. We just sort of stick with that. But obviously the stick in the mud does seem to be this 44, 54. So we'll do a little bit more digging when we can get a bit more information about this, and then the next video when we're doing bigger turbos and pumps and all that sort of stuff, we'll have that nailed. And whatever we stick to, we've got both options now. We can go down the path of we'll do this or we'll do this, or we'll just keep doing both, and we could talk about both. But I like a simple life, so it'd be nice if I can just talk about we've run it in shoot 54 or we've run it in shoot 44. Whichever's nearest and most accurate to what these should be kicking out from the factory is what we're going to stick with. So if we do the 238 one, it's a little bit down. If we do the 279 one, it's probably a tiny bit above what it should be. But like I say, it's not really making much difference. We use this dyno as a tool. It'd be nice if it were a marketing tool, but it generally doesn't work out like a marketing tool. It's just literally a tool to gain what difference have we made to this engine, how much percentage of the power that we had before have we increased it by, and then we go out on the road with a performance box and we sort of cement them figures or them improvements by the difference it makes to the speed of the car and the acceleration. So got a little bit more complicated than I wanted it to get. Probably not the easy Sunday afternoon or whenever this video goes out viewing that people like. A little bit of maths and a little bit of thinking involved. But whatever you think, stick it in the comment section and we're happy to have a discussion. But one thing to add on this one before we go out on the road test is we added more boost, we've added more fuel, and we've done all that sort of stuff, and it's made no difference whatsoever to the power that this has done. We're right on the edge of where we can be EGT wise, right on the edge where we can be air fuel ratio wise, because it's still got all the DPF in and stuff like that. So if you can have more, it's going to come at some expense. You're going to have to run a lot more boost and a lot more fuel to make a little bit more, and it's not going to help the longevity of the car. So anyway, we'll get out on the road. Hopefully there's not too many cars kicking about and we can just have a little drive and see how much difference it feels. So wait for us. So we're back in the Amarok. This has got our sort of first stage of tuning on there, so literally standard car, just remapped. So see how much different it is. It's all up to temp, hot off the dyno. It's not even going to have cooled down. So the conditions pretty similar. I think it were 8.5 degrees yesterday. It's 7.5 now. Sun's just going down. It's going to drop a bit colder pretty shortly. So I've only done 264 miles up to now. A good 21 miles for the tuning. So we're in drive, not in sport. But in sport, might as well. Right, have it. It's whipping through gears a bit quicker. So yeah, nice. That's made a decent difference. Obviously, something as big and heavy as this, it's not as dramatic as say giving you 40 horsepower in your a beefer or whatever, but feels good nonetheless. Put it into manual because I don't like how it kicks down 50 gears and you just want to get a little bit. So it's sort of 1500 RPM, 25 mile an hour in fifth. And off you go. A little bit of a delay. And off you go. It's not slow. It sits you back. I will do like some of the other YouTubers are doing and put your foot down. That were all made up. But yeah, really happy. Most customers would definitely be happy with this, but this one's never even drove his car and wants more than he's got, so let's see what else it can do. Plenty of upgrades to choose from. None of them's been tested on our dyno, so that's where we'll get all the figures and see what we can get. So that's 6.6 to 100 to 60, 100 kilometres. So that's a fair improvement. 0.6 seconds, something like that. So sort of 10% improvement. I don't think it's too bad. Like I say, it's a big thing to get off the line. So I'm imagining there'll be a bigger difference sort of 60 and beyond, but we'd have to go to a track to test that, so I don't know. I'm sure we can find somewhere with a little bit of a runway or something like that to test it on before we get this video out. But I think these book 22 seconds to 22.8 seconds to 100 or something like that, 100 mile an hour, so like 160 k's, something like that, 150 odd k's, so it's not quick to 100. And when you consider that A5 we're doing 100 mile an hour in 8 seconds or 9 seconds. So I think it's been a successful test. Prayed to God that we wouldn't have a totally different weather situation. So there's tons we can do to this to get more from it, sort of speed wise, like it's not really got any launch control and stuff like that, so we could play with all that. But I think as with any project, we try and stick to doing what most people are going to do, and most people with these are going to want to stick to just a remap and see what gains there are there. So we'll not be messing about doing gearbox tune at this stage. We'll see where the limits are on stuff, and we'll get we'll compile a list of what we want to do together and decide which way we want to go. But I think with turbo limited now, definitely injectors are not stretched too much, so the next step's going to be a turbo. I think we're going to probably put the 2263 on first, thinking about it, and then we'll see about putting the 2872 on, and maybe something bigger if we don't get the numbers we want, but we'll see what we can do. So this has come a little bit after the last bit of the video, so we'll have to see how we can chop this in. It might look like a bit of an act job, so I do apologise if it seems not to follow suit. So anyway, we've got the Amarok back on because we've done a few more miles in it. I think we're up to 400 and... oh, it's gone off, key's gone off there. 438 we're at now. So I was never happy with the power figures it did. Obviously we did all the messing about with the shoot 4, shoot 5, 4, all that crap. But when we were out driving it the first time, we came back, had a look at the logs, and the back pressure on the DPF were quite high. I thought, well, it's only done 200 odd miles, what's going on there? When we looked at the logs when it first came to us, because we always monitor that stuff, like part of our tuning check, and the DPF pressure and the soot loading were quite high then as well, which is a bit strange when it only done 200 miles or whatever. So what we've done, we've regened it, gone for a decent drive, and because we're not driving it long distance for a long time and going through the regen process, it was still getting blocked up a little bit, a bit quicker than we want, because it's getting just a lot of just full throttle stuff when we've been driving it. So we've regened it again and done some more miles, gently driving it round and just doing what we normally do. Got to the 400 odd miles that we've got now. And this is what we had before. So we've put it back on the dyno, we've done nothing else to the car. So if you look here, so we did 236 when it had done 200 odd mile, and then with a tune on 276. And we've done loads of tweaking to try and get more out of it in between and stuff like that. Not really got anywhere. But then now we've put it on. So you see that's still version 4, and that's standard. Obviously there's a lot of curves coming up here. But as you can see, standard before it did 236, now it's done 257, which is nearer to what it should be, 258. And before it did 276, now it's in 297, which is pretty much where I want it to be. So this is literally, when you look at the logs, there's no difference in power, no difference in torque request, no difference in boost, no difference in exhaust temperatures, absolutely nothing's changed, except it's done all this more power. Literally, like the 276 or 297, it's just literally higher by 20 horsepower everywhere, and 20, 25, 30 foot-pound of torque. So it's made quite a decent difference. So now if you look, I'll just get rid of the ones before, hide, and then hide. So the difference between the runs is very similar to before, but what we've actually ended up with is where we expected to be. So there's one or two things going on here. The back pressure and the soot loading and everything was limiting the power, which I don't think it limited that much from past experience. But just getting some more miles on its back and sort of bedding it in a little bit, which we had a few people in the comments of the first video saying, oh, you need to run it in first and blah, blah, blah. Definitely don't need to run an engine in to get it to behave. It's not going to damage anything, getting a hard time. But what you are trying to get, the only thing that you're trying to bed in on a new engine that really matters is your piston ring to bore. You're just trying to get that to get a nice tight seal, because that's just a reciprocating seal. You've not got a really nice tight seal there. Everywhere else you've got your oil. It's just downhill for the turbo bearings, the crank bearings. Everything's just going to get worse over time. It's not going to get better. Might loosen up a little bit, but the tolerances in these need to be good enough that it's not going to make any difference to power how tight or loose the crank bearings are. But it's definitely the blow by and the piston to ring. So I think we've got a bit of both going on. The next test we're going to try to do, if we can, is get the DPF to load back up and see how long it takes to get the DPF to load back up to the same amount as it did before and put it back on and see if it limits the power. But I don't think it will. I think it's a combination of both, a little bit here, a little bit there. But it's quite a big difference. The weather's terrible at the minute. Still too wet to go out there and do any more 0 to 60 runs and see what it'll actually do. And we have got the gearbox tune to do next as well. We're sort of making a bit of headway with that. So hopefully this is a nice conclusion to this video. So the figures are better than we expected and about where we want to be. So cheers.